All right, we've got a lot of information to share with you this evening. Most of you know your way around this facility, but we do have a few guests, so for their benefit, we'll do a little housekeeping. In the event of an emergency, we would exit through these doors. If for any reason you can't get to those doors, if they're blocked, there are also exits to my left down this hallway. The restrooms are also located to my left down the hall. If you would please be so kind as to silence your cell phones, that would be greatly appreciated. We've got a great deal of information. Some of the topics we're going to cover are going to raise individual questions. So we're going to change our format just a tiny bit. We're going to have our speakers present, then we're going to open it up for some general questions. So if you have a question that is general in nature that everybody in the group would probably be interested in, please, after the presentations, come up to the microphone and let us know what your questions are. Then we're going to break, and everybody that's here is going to go to one of the maps on the wall, and we're going to stay here and individually, face-to-face, answer your questions until you folks are satisfied that we've given you what you need to know. All right, so our speakers this evening are Mr. Justin Whitesell. He's our Operations Section Chief. Then we're going to hear from Ms. Caroline Mitchell, Town Manager, Ms. Jamie Scroggins, County Administrator, and finally, Sheriff Justin Casey. So with that, here we go.
All right, so, whoa, too much energy, sorry. Try and simmer down a little bit. So, I'm the Operations Section Chief, like Michael was saying, and I'm just going to give you a perspective of what we've been doing up Henson Creek so you're aware. I know the road's been closed and not everybody's been able to see what we've had going on up there, but we wanted to make sure you guys understood and what we're trying to do to mitigate flooding potential down here in Lake City. So we got a slideshow to kind of walk through so everybody's aware. So here's a map of the slides, the lower slides. There's obviously some upper slides. These are the ones we can get to right now in green. So we're trying to work in these slides, the ones that we can get equipment down into to pull the debris out. Not all these slides can we get into and access the debris to make sure that we can pull it out. So we've been working today. They were working up here in Big Casino, pulling debris out of Big Casino and trying to remove the snow. It went over through the creek, so we're trying to make sure we get all that debris and material out of there. And then we've already completed Klondike and the Fanny Fern. We've opened up a bit so we can at least get traffic through there and a little bit of the channel in the river. Modoc, we cleaned up a little bit on the upper end. On the lower end, we're not able to get equipment down in there. And then, so we're going to finish up Big Casino hopefully tomorrow. And then also Lee Smelter has been cleaned out as best we can. Most of the debris has been removed out of there. And when I talk about debris, we have some pictures to show you for that as well, so you have an idea what we're talking about. But that's what the slides that we're working with right now, trying to get the debris out, mitigate the hazard down here in Lake City. So the first part I wanted to talk about was the dam deconstruction. I'm sure everybody's aware the historic dam being removed. But this is the robot that they brought in that they take down with a crane. It's a jackhammer robot that they're able to start taking that down with smaller pieces so we don't have large pieces going in the river. And that's the work they were able to complete. And I didn't get up there today. I went up County Road 30 to check some things up there. But I know yesterday, at the end of the day, this is what it looked like over here on the right. And that's about how far they had gotten yesterday. And I'm sure they made some more progress up there today, all day that they were working. So next is some of the slides. It's a little hard to see just because they're dark. But these are the slides. And then the creek is actually hidden down under here, under all the debris. This is one of those that we can't actually get into. You can see a lot of the bigger trees, a lot of the needles down in there. This is obviously what we're trying to prevent. The pooling that you're seeing here, the water backing up with all the debris damming up a little bit. The water is still finding its way underneath there, but there's quite a bit of it still pulling up behind that debris dam there and the snow. There's a lot of snow, a lot of trees in there, and then some rock and other dirt and needles and things like that. But, whoa, again. So we're working on cleaning those out. Does that one work better? All right. Hopefully I won't do that again. This was actually Lee Smelter, the one that we pulled out quite a bit of these larger material. We just didn't want them floating down any further, so we pulled those out and moved them out of the floodplain over onto the other side of the road, and then we're going to move them up further up into, I can't remember the name of it right off the top of my head now. It's on one of these maps. Big Casino. That's it, Big Casino. Too many names, I got to remember them all. I'm obviously not a local. So this is the Klondike slide. I said we had completed it. So what we did is had the excavators go through and remove the debris. So the snow went all the way across, straight across to the rock wall that was there. And they were able to come in and remove the debris. And then we also took the snow dam out so that didn't have any potential to cause a dam again. So we took all that out, and that's what we're doing in Big Casino, trying to do the same thing in Big Casino. So it should look similar to that by the time we're done. And that's the other looking down river. That's it. So, Carolyn, I think you're next. Do you want the pointer?
I don't think I need that.
You need to go forward. All right.
Thanks. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Last week, we shared with you that the Corps of Engineers was here on site evaluating the waterways and the avalanche debris, and were brought in specifically to assist in what we have called flood fight. The two gentlemen that came, one a hydrologist and the other a soils researcher, spent 3 days gathering data and talking with us about potential concepts that could be implemented to minimize our risk. As with all of the experts that have visited over the last several weeks, they were absolutely astounded by what they saw. The amount of snowpack in the drainage, coupled with the debris, presented significant challenges for the modeling that they would typically provide. They consulted with others on the staff at the Corps of Engineers for additional assistance. The town of Lake City also contracts with engineers, and we asked that they also come to Lake City last week and be a part of the process and the discussion. On Wednesday evening, the Corps presented 3 concepts to the Unified Coordination Group, and on Thursday morning, members of the UCG, county, and town staff joined the Corps and our engineers for a walk through of the concepts on the ground. The town's engineers took the concepts and created specs and drawings for potential work and provided cost estimates for the UCG, county, and town to consider. On Friday, we came together as a group and we made a decision based on recommendations, knowledge, experience, and understanding of this community. We instructed members of the UCG to contact the state and determine if we could order the necessary supplies for the project. By Monday, however, it became clear that the process through the state would take longer than necessary, and based on changing weather conditions and an increase in water gauge heights over the weekend. The county and the town determined we could do the work together and complete the task. The concept selected that had the highest probability of success, noted by the Corps of Engineers, is to increase the height of the historically utilized existing earthen berm on the north side of Henson Creek. And I believe this map is also in your handout, and we have it to go up here. So the northern berm is depicted on the north side of Henson Creek. It is the pink line that stretches across there. So the berm would start on the west side of County Road 20, across from Pump House Park, close to the intersection at Bluff and First Streets, tying into the rock wall and extend east to Highway 149. We would then continue on the east side of Highway 149, following the trail, ending a short distance from the confluence of the river. In places, this berm would have an increase of up to 4 feet high. On the south side of Henson Creek, an additional berm would be built just before the county line. This berm, also up to 4 feet in height in places, would tie in with the existing rock wall to the west of the highway, extend across the highway where CDOT will install a water diversion speed bump that they have also had engineered on Monday, and extend east going into Memorial Park. This plan does place 9 structures, including 1 business and 6 homes, at greater risk for the potential of water. The Corps of Engineers in their concept included large levee bags, also known as HESCO bags or super sacks, as a possibility for structure protection around homes and buildings that would be at greater risk. This morning at 11 a.m., members of the UCG, county and town, met with those that own or manage the properties that have been identified at greater risk. Following this morning's meeting, an order of 768 larger structure protection bags was placed and should arrive by the end of this week. We all recognize that that is not an absolute solution for these properties, and this plan is also dependent on us being able to receive them and fill them prior to an event. This decision was not made lightly. Based on the concepts provided by the Corps, the construction of both the north and south berm give this community the best opportunity to minimize our risk from high water and debris. According to the Corps, this should also significantly reduce the number of structures in town that would have a need to sandbag for structure protection. It is possible that the berm could sustain damage in what the Corps described to us as the potential for a pulse of water for a short period of time. If that occurred, we would be able to move equipment quickly to repair the section of berm. The town and county will work together to complete this project beginning tomorrow morning with an anticipated target completion date of June 11th.
Thanks, Caroline. So, good evening, everyone. In light of that recent news and also that new plan, it's important that we get more specific when talking about sandbagging efforts. So I want to first start by explaining, I know most of you have seen sandbags stationed all throughout town. Those were specifically purchased with state funding, and that state funding mandates that they can only be used for critical or historic infrastructure. So they cannot be used for residents or businesses. So let's talk about residents and businesses. So in terms of residential property, I have to just be real upfront and say that it is the property owner's responsibility to protect your own property and make the decision whether or not to sandbag at all. But with that in mind, Hinsdale County has ordered a limited number of small sandbags that will be filled this week by a volunteer crew. And the town and county also received a donation of 800 pre-filled sandbags from an individual named Hoyt Anderson of Rocky Mountain Soils, Inc. in Alamosa. And he found a truck driver named Tell Honeycutt to deliver those last week. And I have to say a huge thanks to Caroline and Jameson Johnston for accepting that delivery late at night. I think it was like, 10:30 at night, or it was after dark. And they went out there and met those individuals and helped them unload those pallets of sandbags. So we do have those sandbags in addition to the 3,000 we're hoping to fill this week available for residents. But as I'm sure you guys know, that's not going to be enough for everyone in a way that you would probably prefer to protect your own property. So on your handout, there's actually sources for sandbags and sand. We tried to give you as many as we could if folks want to be proactive and keep their own property and safety in mind. But some residents have a higher probability of being impacted by high water. And right now, those areas have been identified as between the Lake Fork River and Henson Street, as well as low-lying areas south of town you may want to sandbag. So we have a new map. It's the fourth map over from the left wall right here. And we're calling that areas of concern. So after this meeting, might be helpful to go take a photo of that, or at least go look at it and see where you are in relation. So what we've basically planned is those residents identified in that specific area can pick up a limited number of sandbags until they're gone. They'll be available at the medical center on Monday, beginning at 9 a.m. So Monday at 9 a.m., and there will be a volunteer coordinator on site to help coordinate those efforts. So our preference is that we deploy those particular sandbags we have available for the folks that are in the area of concern first. And if there should be some left, then we'll work on how to distribute those at a later time. So keeping that in mind, those sandbags are primarily for doorways and thresholds. It's still up to individual residents to fortify their homes as they see fit. So a lot of just personal responsibility there we're encouraging, both town and county. So we basically want you to do what you feel is right for your life and your property. But I do want to make sure we talk about the fact that we do have some sandbags available to those folks in vulnerable areas. And then in terms of businesses, Lake City Dirt has ordered a limited supply of sandbags for downtown businesses. Those will be available for $50 per pallet, which covers the cost of the sand and bags. And right now, businesses are limited to 3 pallets, and the businesses in the highest areas of concern will be given priority. So, Elaine, where'd you go? If you could raise your hand real quick. So business owners, if you're interested after the meeting, perhaps you can get together with Elaine and let her know should you be interested in trying to get some of those sandbags. Again, I would kind of focus on that area of concern map after this meeting. Justin Casey.
So first of all, I want to point out that everyone over here, whether it's the folks from the state, the UCG, our friends and neighbors that have come in, the town, the county, all of them are working very hard on preparedness, on planning, on preparation, and I want to thank them for the work that they're doing, because they're doing an incredible job and working hard, long hours. So at this end of the table, my role is more of the response side of things, which thankfully we haven't needed yet. But what I do want to point out is some of the things that we've talked about before, and I want to remind you of what we are doing and what you could be listening for, aware of, in terms of being alerted, warned, and know what the plan is if we do have an incident occur. First of all, I want to remind you and reassure you that we are monitoring up County Road 20 and up County Road 30. There's gauges on the streams for us to see what those water levels are, to look for either increase or decrease in water levels. We've got different points that we're looking for to see if there's an area of concern. But we're also not relying purely on electronic remote gauges. We also have people who are getting eyes on those roads on a regular basis. And as the water level has been increasing, we're also increasing how often we're checking. We'll continue to do that as this unfolds. I also want to remind you of the program that we have in place for warning. That program is the Get Ready, Get Set, or Go Now. Those are the levels of warning that we've established. So be watching the information that comes out, posted on the website, on the county Facebook page, also on what we call the trap lines. Our public information folks are doing a great job of updating information around town on those sandwich boards. And we also still have that public information phone number that you can call. So you can call and ask specific questions. But if we get to a point where the level of concern increases, we will activate either that get ready, get set, or go now level of warning. The way that we're going to be putting those emergency notifications out, our primary method is through Code Red. So we're strongly encouraging people to download that app, to register for Code Red. You can do that over here at Public Health, and they'll help you sign up if you need help doing that. But we're also not relying solely on Code Red to get things out. We know that we live, as I like to say, at the end of the line when it comes to technology. And so Code Red is great, but we're also going to be using Reverse 911 if there's an emergency notification that needs to go out. We've also been working on various options for siren systems. Right now we have a temporary system installed that puts out a siren tone as well as a voice notification to give you instructions. And we're continuing to develop that siren plan even though we have a temporary one in place. And then if we end up all the way to the point of potential evacuations, if we end up evacuating an area, and you can see the different zones that we've established here, if we evacuate that area, we'll also be using officers or search and rescue volunteers to help go to those areas. But we really want you to pay attention to those Code Red messages because that's going to be the most information as early as possible so that you can plan, so that you can make good decisions. I've had a lot of people ask me questions about what if we evacuate, where do we go, and what would that look like? First of all, I want to remind you we've got these different evacuation zones established. Those evacuation zones are labeled with various letters, but it doesn't mean that they're sequential. If we evacuate A, it doesn't mean that B is necessarily next. We just divided them up so that depending on where the concern is, we can alert those people and make sure that they have time to get out of the way. As far as routes go, each meeting we've discussed the concern about if we're talking about high water, is going north the best option because we all know that the highway goes right along the river going up towards Gunnison. We also know that the resources that we would be sending people to are in Gunnison. If we think that it's safe to go north to Gunnison, we'll direct you to go north. If we're concerned about the highway north of town, we're not going to direct you to go north. We're going to direct you to go south. Lake City's pretty easy when it comes to evacuations. We've got two options, north or south. So if you get a notification, pay attention to what we're telling you in terms of which direction because that's our recommendation of which way to go. If we evacuate, we're also going to be activating those evacuation checkpoints that we mentioned last week. Those checkpoints are places in areas that we've established that are safety zones where we're not concerned about high water, not concerned about flooding. People can stop there. We can make sure to catalog who's gone out so we know you're accounted for. We can get your information to be able to know where you're at so we can get you updates. And you'll also get information on where you can go to get potential resources or updates as well. Another area that I've talked about each time is the different road closures that we've done, because we have areas that have been closed either by the county or by the BLM. Those closures are clearly marked. We've got gates low down on County Road 20, about a mile, little over a mile up County Road 20. We also have the closed gate at the bottom of the Shelf Road on County Road 30. Those closures are closed to both vehicle and pedestrian traffic. The reason for that is twofold. It's for safety because we're worried about the conditions on those roads, and it's also, especially up County Road 20, to give room for the crews that are working hard up there to remove debris and to remove that dam, room to work without worrying about people coming up and potentially walking or driving right behind them as they're working. So please respect those closures. In closing, before I sit down, I want to point out that right now we're in the stage of preparedness, and that's what we're encouraging you to do. All of us have a responsibility to self-evaluate, to look at our property, our family, the things we care about, and make sure that we're thinking about how we can best prepare for the possibility of an emergency. And that's true all year long. That's true whether it's flooding or another emergency down the road. And that's also the nature of living in the beautiful place that we live, that we know that we are, as I said, at the end of the line, and a lot of times it is up to us to make those personal decisions and to be prepared. So I want to continue to encourage you to think that way. Think about what your personal plan is, what you would take with you if you had to go, who you would contact, and set those things in place. Also, the last couple weeks, as I've talked, I've mentioned a couple of things that I lost in the avalanche this winter. And I want to thank everyone who has come and offered to try and find me a crystal ball. That would be really handy if we had that. So far, I haven't gotten one, but I appreciate all the people who are still looking for me. I also haven't gotten that weather remote control that we were hoping to have to be able to control the weather a little bit more to our liking right now. But this evening, what I want to talk about is something that I did not lose in the avalanche. Something I did not lose in the avalanche is resiliency. Something I did not lose in the avalanche is a care for our community and for my friends and for my neighbors. And what I want to stress is that that's what we as a community need right now. We are a resilient community who cares about our community and our neighbors. And that's what we need to be doing as we plan, as we prepare, and as we help each other out as we go through this together. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff Casey. All right, at this time, we'd like to open it up for a few questions. If you would, please keep this to questions that are general in nature. I know a lot of folks have got questions about your individual residence or your individual business. We'll stay here and answer those questions. We're going to split up and go to the boards, to the maps, and we'll stay here as long as we need to until we get you taken care of. So has anybody got a general question they'd like to pose? Please come up to the microphone.
My name is Miriam Truitt. My question is evacuation for everybody. What are you doing about the Dawn of Hope Bridge? Are you protecting that? Because if that goes out, we're stuck, all of us. Okay?
It's a great question. Mrs. Truitt was asking about the Dawn of Hope Bridge, which is the bridge south of town right before you start up Slumgolian Pass. And what are we doing about that bridge? It is an important bridge. What we've been doing, we've actually evaluated not just that bridge, but all the bridges that we would have to use in the event of an evacuation. So CDOT has looked closely at that one. They said that that one is very low risk. One of the great things about that bridge, it doesn't have a center pillar like the one across Henson over here. So that's certainly helpful. But we also, in our planning and preparedness, have Plan B. So we're working on what routes would we take people around that bridge if we had concerns.
Okay, good.
So thank you.
That
Good
answers my
question.
Come on up, sir.
I'm Harvey Duchesne. I've got questions about the two evacuation routes. The bulk of the water that you're expecting is coming down, probably down Henson. Certainly there'll be a contribution on the Lake Fork, but that's the concern. You've got two crossings where that water is going to be a problem. One of them is the bridge in the middle of town, and that same water, when it's very high, is what's likely to cause a problem of undercutting along the low spots on the road going out of town to the north. If you've got an alternate plan in the event that we've got both of those damaged in some fashion that we can't use them.
Yeah, good question. Mr. Duchesne was asking about the bridges from the Henson Creek flow and then especially as it continues north. And again, the answer is we are evaluating all of those bridges. We've had various people, CDOT or even the Army Corps of Engineers looked at bridges. I even went and talked with the gentleman who was here looking at the different dams and levees and asked him to look at bridges while he was going as well, because another set of eyes is always welcome. As we've been looking at those bridges, we do have alternate plans. So as much as we talk about having one highway through town, It's amazing as we start looking at maps, some of the ways that we can go around and reroute traffic. Some of those ways are across private property, so we've been talking to private property owners to get permission to use their property as an evacuation route in the event a bridge goes out. We've established those alternate routes all the way north beyond the county line, all the way a ways into Gunnison County in conjunction with private property owners and the BLM, and then also looking south. If we had an issue at the Henson Bridge, how could we still get people in this part of town south? And we have a plan in place for that as well. Thank you.
I'm Richard Dunham, and I wanted to ask a question about, you mentioned there was several of those slides that you could not get equipment down to get those things cleared out. Is it possible to use explosives to blow that stuff out of there, or is there any other options that we have to get to those ones that you cannot get to the equipment to?
Yeah, another good question. So we're not ruling anything out of our toolkit. Explosives is one of those options that we're looking at to potentially get rid of the debris in there. There's a lot that goes into explosives. They're not as simple. If we just place them on top of the debris, the energy goes up and doesn't actually take care of the debris. So we're trying to get some explosive experts in here to tell us what they can and can't do to verify that, but it is another tool that we have in our toolbox available to us. So,
Okay, great.
thank you.
Thank you.
Any more questions?
My name's Alan Moore. Y'all discussed the demolition of the Treasure Mine, but you didn't say anything about the Ute Ulay. Is it still going to be demolished, and what's the time frame for the completion on both of those dams?
So to answer your question on the Ulay mine or the Ulay dam, we're not actually going to do anything with it. It has that large hole on its own that was created. So the dam experts and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers didn't feel that Ulay dam was going to be a concern. The debris wasn't going to necessarily get held up there, so we weren't concerned with that one. We're going to leave the Ulay dam alone. To answer your question about the Hidden Treasure Dam timeline, they were given 10 days. We've asked for an extension on their contract, so they're working as quickly as they can, and we don't have a end date for that right at this point, but hopefully, obviously before high water's our target, so before the 18th of June is when we're shooting for, but if we can get it done sooner, that's what we're hoping for. And as we get an end date to that, we'll definitely get that out to the community. So.
All right, thank you, sir.